Hi and welcome. I'm Mich Bondesio, and this is Creating Cadence, a podcast about what it really takes to work well and live well at a cadence that's more sustainable for us, despite this fast-paced world we live in. I help high-performing founders, creatively minded entrepreneurs, and purpose-driven business owners who want to make an impact without sacrificing themselves to burnout and overwork. I'm also the author of The Cadence Effect, and I write more about ways to create cadence over on Substack. Creating Cadence is about reimagining work and business, challenging outdated approaches and exploring new ideas around pace, performance, productivity, creativity, regenerative business, digital wellness, and the future of work. Think of it as your regular dose of insight and inspiration to help you build a meaningful business and life with a rhythm that's more intentional, more effective, and more regenerative. Whether you're listening on your commute, on a walk, or in between tasks, thanks for tuning in. This is episode 90, the seventh and final episode of season 14, published in November 2025, but the interview element was recorded in September. The theme for this season is rewriting the rules of work, because the world of work is changing rapidly, and it's up to us as founders and leaders to shape that change more consciously, not just for profit, but for people and planet too. I've been looking at how we do this through the lens of productivity, leadership, and business models that replenish. Today's episode is the last of 3 interviews this season, and it's with Richard Dickson of Play It Green. This is an interesting, wide-ranging and highly insightful conversation. We talk about rethinking profit and impact, future-ready leadership, and building businesses that regenerate rather than deplete. I think it's a perfect episode to end the season on, and I can't wait for you to listen. But first, a quick news update from me. So first, the Creating Cadence podcast has reached a whopping 90 episodes. That's a really big deal for me, and we are only 10 episodes from a massive milestone that I never would have imagined I'd get to when I started this experiment 5 years ago. So I want to extend a massive thank you to all my listeners across 30 countries who tune in regularly to hear what I have to say and to learn from my brilliant guests. I'd also like to thank my very first podcast sponsor, which I got this year. That's Magic Mind, whose products align really well with the idea behind Creating Cadence. And to those loyal friends and fans who are always recommending my podcast to people that they meet, thank you too. I wouldn't be here without all of you, so a huge, huge thank you and a big hug to each of you for being a part of this special journey so far. In other news in my world, my work is also transitioning. It's something I've been thinking about for the last 6 months, and I'm now ready to start making the shift. Previously, I've separated the 2 different strands of my work, but through my learning journey around sustainability over the past 18 months, I've realized that I want to make even more of a difference than I currently am. And to do that, I need to consolidate what I'm doing so I can offer it all as a fractional package under one focus. So I'm bringing together the comms, coaching, and project management skills I've honed across my career with a single focus to support people and organizations doing meaningful work in sustainability-related spheres. So keep an eye out for some more announcements related to these shifts next year. The podcast and my Substack will continue as is. So looking forward to 2026, a quick reminder about my Cadence Catalyst program, which is an 8-week strategic mastermind launching in the first quarter of 26. You have the opportunity to join a curated peer group of successful entrepreneurs, creative thinking founders, and conscious leaders for a flexible online journey to reset how you work, lead, and live. During these live online sessions, we look at building more regenerative working practices that will help you achieve more sustainable success and to future-proof your business in 2026 and beyond. There are only 8 places available per cohort. If you want to find out more, you can register your interest at cadence.kit.com/cadence-catalyst, and I'll be in touch with more info. And I'll share the link to that in the show notes. So before we get to the interview, in the lead up to December and the holidays, I find that this is always a weird part of the year because time stretches in liminal ways. Things tend to speed up as we work through our last-minute to-dos and compress a lot into a little bit of time as the year shrinks to a close. But things also expand as we start thinking about next year and all the possibilities that it may hold. So it can be really exciting, but it can also add a lot of extra pressure to us alongside the holiday stuff. So just a little reminder from me to please remember to make space, to be grounded, and to be kind to yourself during this time too. So that's my news and thoughts. Let's get on to the final interview of this season with Richard Dickson. Richard Dickson is the co-founder and CEO of Play It Green, a B Corp helping businesses take practical, measurable steps towards sustainability through its 3-step approach, which involves reducing footprints, repairing the planet, and re-giving 10% of revenue to good causes. Play It Green makes positive change simple and affordable for any organization, and under Richard's leadership, the company has planted over 900,000 trees, mangroves, and sea kelp, while supporting nature repair projects that also create employment and protect biodiversity. With a background in psychology, philosophy, and 2 decades in retail, Richard combines strategic insight with a deep commitment to ethical business. He's a proud neurodiverse founder who believes sustainability should be transparent, science-backed, and inspiring. His mission is to empower people and businesses to be the solution, proving that profit, purpose, and planet can grow together. I really enjoyed my chat with Richard because, as you'll hear, he draws deeply from his lived experience, his neurodivergence, and his environmental insight to demonstrate what it means to be a values-led leader. He also explains complex concepts simply and creates clear connections between rethinking profit and impact, future-ready leadership, and building businesses that regenerate rather than deplete, which in turn enable us to make what Richard calls more resilient money. I'm certain that you'll gain some helpful ideas, if not some big light bulb moments from this conversation. So if you're ready, let's dive in. So welcome, Richard. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, really good to be here. Thanks for the invite, Mich.
It's my pleasure. So we originally connected on LinkedIn last year, and then I finally got to meet you in person at the B Corp Fest at the Wellbeing Farm in June of this year, June 2025. You did this great workshop session with Zoe Detko, who has also been a guest on the podcast in season 12. And hearing you speak there firsthand about your experience and considering the key concepts that I'm covering as part of this season, which is rewriting the rules of work, I knew that it would be really valuable for us to have a conversation. But before we start exploring, I always begin by asking my guests for a bit of context in their lives. So please tell us where you find yourself in this moment in terms of life and work.
Life and work, I'll start with life because that's what brings me joy. I'm a father of 2 teenage boys. 1 neurodiverse, 1 neurotypical, both amazing. Husband to an amazing, supportive lady, and dog father to 2 crazy dogs.
Wow, lots going on then.
Yes, yeah, very much. Crazy boys, crazy dogs.
That's fantastic. An interesting mix as well.
Yes.
Richard, before we go broad, I'm also really interested to find out what you do to support your well-being and your productivity. And I've seen you speak openly on social media about the fact that you discovered late in life that you are neurodiverse. And I know from personal experience that it can take an incredible amount of energy to show up and function and perform as a person with neurodivergent tendencies in a neurotypical world. So tell us what key habits, behaviors, or routines you're engaging in to support yourself that help you stay focused and reduce your stress and be more productive. And have you altered any of those as a result of this new knowledge that you've got about how your brain works?
Strangely, I discovered a habit when I was 40. So a long time before I discovered I was neurodiverse, because that was only 2 years ago. But we'd lost twin babies in late stage pregnancy, and I needed something to say.
Oh, gosh.
It was the worst thing ever, but it's one of those things that you try and not see the positives, that's the wrong word, but move on in a better way and be more empathic and understanding of the world. But I discovered mixed martial arts. And what that taught me was it wasn't just the discipline, it was the pushing yourself further than normal in that sort of sporting environment. And what I found was my brain obviously has never produced dopamine normally and functions slightly differently to other people. And I found that the endorphins that are produced after very hard exercise, so that sort of exercise where you think you might throw up, you don't think you can carry on going, and actually you've always got further to go when your brain tells you that. And I discovered that with mixed martial arts. That gave me balance. And so I've made sure that sports, football, mixed martial arts training is part of my routine because it helps level my brain and get rid of all of the chemical cortisol that builds up through anxiety and stress that comes with neurodivergent brains.
That's really interesting. I've never done martial arts myself, but I read a book called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. I don't know if you've come across it before. He was kind of a chess savant at the age of 9, and then he later moved into martial arts and became a world champion. And he talks a lot about the impact and power it can have over your brain and in terms of helping you to channel your attention and your focus. So I can understand what you're saying about the power of physical exercise in helping to streamline things. Thank you. So let's move on to the theme for this season, which is rewriting the rules of work. I've been looking at this through the lens of 3 key perspectives: that of building productivity systems that replenish, reimagining leadership styles to embrace well-being, and designing businesses for a changing planet. Your work is rooted in encouraging more regenerative business models that embed both environmental and social stewardship. And you describe yourself as a conscious capitalist, and I'd really like you to define what that means for us. But I think you can potentially speak to all 3 of these perspectives that I'm exploring. So from your experience or your outlook, what do you think about these 3 ideas around leadership, productivity, and business? And why do you think that it's important that we rewrite the rules of work and business in these 3 areas?
I'll say I have lived experience of why we need to do it. I worked for a not-for-profit that sounded fantastic, and the output and the impact was, but the way they ran their business was very old school. And it created a negative, toxic environment for people to work in, even though they were doing something amazing. And it made me realize, actually, if companies like that have such a great impact can be run badly, there needs to be a rethink of everything. And so when I set up my business, I went back to, I wrote my thesis on conscious capitalism. We'll go to what that means in a minute, but I set my business up with that in mind, so that everything we do is about people and planet and positive impact, both internally and externally, and about creating community, because that's missing in the business world. Everything is transactional, and what we've tried to do is create relationships, positive relationships, and valuable relationships with each and every one of our customers. And that builds community, and then those customers start to work together. And as that community grows, it's stronger and a different way of doing business.
It's fantastic. And when we embed those things in our business and the way we do business, it does translate into better relationships with our customers, helps them be better in their business. So it feels like a no-brainer to people who are aware of these things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal for me is always when I have meetings, and I never sell the business. We haven't advertised or marketed yet. We've grown through word of mouth and through recommendation. And I've been a firm believer in growing slowly and building firm foundations, but also that the universe, when you do the right thing, the right things tend to happen. And so for me, business has changed completely. What consumers are demanding, what employees are demanding. People are becoming more conscious. I'm trying to write a book at the moment. I'm 3 chapters in, probably time for a different podcast, but I want to go beyond conscious into that sort of enlightened, where we're not just conscious of what we're doing. Everything we do has those thoughts of how can it have a positive impact on people and planet. Profit will follow them, but then it's profit that you can be proud of and that you can be comfortable having, as opposed to profit that comes from exploitation and too much profit.
That's an old system, isn't it? And it's one that's not fit for purpose where we're heading with the future of work, as far as I can see. And there's a lot of research backing this as well.
I would agree. I mean, just from a psychology standpoint, doing good makes people feel good. It gives them dopamine, and it becomes an addictive way of doing things. And that is actually way to create culture change. We've had advertising getting us our dopamine moments from, in the 30s it was smoking cigarettes, in the 50s it was whatever, but it's always been that consumer, how can we sell more, make people feel good about buying it. Whereas now what people are starting to think is, can I buy it second hand? Can I get a discount? Can I get a bargain and have it second hand with less impact? And that's why those parts of the economy are growing. The pre-loved economy is the fastest growing parts of our economy at the moment. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I remember hearing Patrick Grant speak at the Wellbeing Farm about how, there is this move towards purchasing pre-loved clothes and so forth. But at the same time, there's something like, I'm going to get the statistic wrong, but it's really staggering, 100 million items of clothing from Zara listed on Vinted. And, are they vintage clothes? Not really.
No, I agree, but it still stops more being made.
Yeah.
We have a customer who has a range of reconditioned laptops, and they were marketing them as sustainable, which they are because they're more sustainable than buying a new one. We arranged to calculate the carbon footprint for reconditioning and delivery, and then rebalance that with nature-based solutions. A company bought 10,000 because it makes sense to, because there's no impact on I mean, it was a big corporation. It wasn't a small company that just on a whim, but they chose them over a company selling new laptops. They knew that that doesn't go on their carbon reporting. So it means legislation's working as well, but companies are realizing that when they behave in a more conscious or enlightened way and talk about it, it gets new customers, it attracts employees, it builds the brand and future-proofs the business, that's the change we're seeing.
100%. And I think that's where these three different topics, they're actually inextricably linked. I think this idea of leadership and systems that replenish and businesses that are designed for this future world that we're going into, where we have less resources and we need to think about the reuse and regenerative practices.
100%. I see a Venn diagram. Part of my neurodiversity, I see patterns and things, and I see that Venn diagram of those things all intersecting and, impacting on each other.
Indeed. So tell us a little bit more about this concept of the conscious capitalist and how you infuse it into your work.
So it started, I studied psychology and philosophy at university, and I started to see patterns I see patterns in everything, but I saw interlinking patterns between the way the education system, finance, politics were all interlinking, and it was all about short-termism and creating almost drones. This is a sort of leftover of the Industrial Revolution, and the sort of education was designed to create factory workers. And it's been kept and perpetuated to keep the status quo. Politics is short-termism, everyone's voted every 4 years, and finance is the economies are run in such a way that it keeps the rich rich and the poor poor. And I still believe, though, that if you work hard, you should be rewarded for it, which is one of the tenets of capitalism. So I started researching, and I saw that capitalism itself is like survival of the fittest. It's an amoral system where the ones that are willing to not necessarily work the hardest, but the ones that are born into the right place or have the right, can beat the others. And it is about beating, it's about winning. And I thought it needs checks and balances. And one of my things with Play Green, when we set up, we give 10% of turnover away, because I believe that, we use resources of the planet and the people and our community, and that is a way to give back before the shareholders get a penny, which was always the thought behind Play Green. And imagine if Google or Apple had done that.
Yeah.
The world would be a different place. There's no arguments. That's trillions and trillions of dollars that could have been fed back into solving hunger and cancer and climate change. All those issues would be solved.
Yeah.
There's no argument. They would not be able to argue that. So conscious capitalism is about evolving capitalism into a sort of more fit for purpose system that meets the needs and the values of modern people, because capitalism was designed hundreds of years ago and has not changed its form, but we have, and technology has, and we're running out of resources, so it's time to fix the system.
Yeah. And I think that conscious capitalist concept ties in really nicely with this idea of the circular economy as well.
100%. I actually met a leading expert she's going to be writing some content for us, which is amazing, into circularity a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, circularity is so important. We work with a couple of innovative companies that are using circularity as their USP and solving sort of plastic waste issues and things like that. So it's really important. Reuse as well is a huge one, because there's so many electronic parts that are thrown away that can be reused. So again, it's rethinking. And I always say, if you imagine we've gone back to the Stone Age, for example, we don't have infrastructure is broken down. We'd barter with what we have, and we wouldn't throw anything away. Even a plastic crisp bag can be used to gather water or something. So, and we need to start looking at resources and waste like that. I just wrote a story about Sweden, I think it is. They're turning food waste from restaurants into biogas for trucks and buses. So
it's a brilliant example.
And this can be, things like that can be done globally. I think that the biggest problem we have is the ones with the money and the power and the status quo, like the oil companies and the people that they fund in government, don't want those shifts. So we're fighting against that. I think the biggest thing, though, is everyone can make those changes with how they spend their money, where they bank, where their pension is, what companies they align with. If everyone stops buying plastic wrap products, they did that in, what country was it? One of the Nordic countries, they stopped buying a brand of toothpaste that had excess packaging, and the company stopped putting excess packaging on their products.
Yeah.
So, it can be done. But I do think businesses are starting to realise they need to change, despite what the mainstream media says.
I agree. And what you were talking there about being resourceful, if we went back to the Stone Age, or if things collapsed, and there is a possibility, that's one possibility for our future, we would have to become incredibly resourceful in terms of how we survive, how we exchange goods and services and so forth. And I think in that respect, there's things that we could learn from third world countries. I mean, I come from South Africa. Well, they say that it's a third world country with a first world infrastructure in some instances. And, people who are living in underprivileged communities are sometimes incredibly resourceful with what they have in terms of what they use to create homes, to create shelters, to do things. So I think that we are incredibly privileged, as you say, in Western countries, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. And there's a lot that we could learn from how other countries are doing it, both in the North and in the South. Yeah. Yeah,
agreed. We are resource heavy when we don't need to be. Although, again, you're seeing changes in things like how they're building new homes.
Yeah.
So that is slowly changing as well. I just think the problem is to create proper culture change. It's a generational, 2 or 3 generations. I'll never forget, I saw a video on YouTube of an ex-KGB, very high up, who'd run away from Russia and ended up in the States. I can't remember, what do they call it when they do that? Anyway, but he talked about how the KGB had aimed to destabilize America over 3 generations. And they would first focus on the people that would go on to be university lecturers and tenured professors. And that would take a generation. They would then focus on the students that those people taught. And then those students would then become parents. And the final thing, which is where we're apparently at now, because this was 3 generations ago, on the young students. And what will happen is, he used the term, and I've seen it bandied around, they will become useful idiots, because they will be able to tell them anything and they'll believe it, even however outlandish it sounds. And I saw this was from the 70s. And it just shows the power of education, and social media now has a huge, I don't go on social media, so I can't be influenced by, anything. The only social media I've gone is LinkedIn, and even there I've found it's seeping into LinkedIn, this dodgy politics. Yeah. And politics used to be about discussion and debate and open conversations. And, if someone had a better argument and could show that they were right, you'd go, oh, I accede, you're right, but no longer. If someone has a better argument than you can put your fingers in your ears and go, I can't hear you, I don't want to talk to you, I'm going to cancel you.
Yeah.
It's really, really strange. It's almost like a regression of maturity to that sort of teenage years where you can't express yourself, so you get angry.
Yeah.
My youngest went through that terribly, where he really struggled to express himself, so he just got angry all the time. And as he's got older, he's the most empathic, kind, lovely kid, but he's learned to express himself.
That's great. I think that's a danger of something like social media as well. I mean, there's a lot of research coming out now around how it and AI and how we're using it is debilitating our brain cells. We're not developing the skills we need, particularly in a younger generation, to be able to question, to be able to be open to someone else's opinion, to be able to think beyond what is being put in front of us. And that's a whole other podcast as well, to be honest, which I may be exploring in the future.
It'd be an interesting one. My neurodiversity makes me question everything. This is why I'm doing what I do, because I always question the status quo. When I started primary school, I was moved schools because I was a difficult child, not because I was naughty. I just asked questions they didn't want to answer, like, but why does 1 + 1 = 2? Who made that rule?
Sounds like me. Sounds very familiar.
but it's important to, that's how change happens. When you question systems and say, well, if that's not working properly, surely there's a better way.
Yeah.
Rather than sticking with the status quo on the treadmill just because, well, it's easy just to do that. I think COVID had a big impact on the way society is moving now because it awoke a lot of people.
Yes.
They realised, well, there is a different life. I don't have to go into the office 9 till 5 every day and feel like every week's the same.
Yeah. Our lives have become a lot more complex as well since COVID, I think. But as you say, a lot more people have become more aware of the multi-layered levels of our life and how we need more flexibility as a result of that. And it'll be interesting to see how things like that play out. All right. So this podcast is also about how we create rhythm and maintain momentum in our life and work. So I want to talk a little bit more about your company, Play It Green. On your website, you state that Play It Green offers simple and cost-effective ways for people and organizations to be greener and more impactful. And I see that you offer environmental and social impact. They're kind of like add-ons for climate positive hospitality or events, and also things like green bookings. And then you also have a really important education piece for the companies that you work with, which falls under the banner of building what you call a climate positive workforce. And I'd love to hear a bit more about that. So talk us through what you do at Play It Green and how it helps your clients to maintain forward motion in their businesses.
So I'll start by saying everything we do is based on the psychology of learning and the psychology of change. Everything has to be done in simple, bite-sized, tiny steps. They have to create dopamine moments where people learn something new or do something that makes them feel good. And when we keep repeating that, you create change. It's the same as my martial arts journey. I couldn't get in the cage and fight with one of the middleweights when I was just starting. But after a journey of tiny little micro adjustments and little steps, same with football. When I've coached kids football, that's how we teach them. And it's the same in sustainability. The biggest problem is consultants make it seem really difficult, really expensive. Companies are going to have to change overnight, and it just creates this rabbit in the headlights moments for the leadership teams of businesses, and they don't want to do it. And what we've done is we've said, look, it's a journey. It's going to take you time. And what we need to do is keep you engaged on that journey over that period of time. Well, how can we do that? By having a more immediate impact as well, which is the nature repair piece. And we do that in a way that creates social impact and employment. It's completely transparent as well and blockchain protected, so we can prove who's planted what, where and when, how much it's grown by. And we have long-term monitoring of the sites. And then obviously the conscious capitalist bit of me's rolled into that, because every piece of revenue that a company gives us, we donate 10% of that back to a charity of their choice. So they're still involved. So it's having a social impact, something that's important to them. And then the main thing we do, whilst we're doing all that, is educate the teams. We send out weekly newsletter with positive news, member-focused content to show them that they're part of a community of businesses making a change. We have a weekly business tip, and it will always be one simple thing. What's the difference between carbon neutral and net zero? What does Europe's new nature-based reporting laws mean for your business? Just one thing that will take a couple of minutes to read, but they learn.
That's great.
And it's those tiny little things. And then the final thing we do, which is what we actually started the business with, is the weekly tip for personal. Because if you change someone's home life, that has a knock-on effect on their family, their friends, and their work life, because they bring that back into work, especially when, a good example, ditch bathroom plastic, buy a shampoo bar. We'll talk about the history of shampoo with interesting facts that people go, I didn't know that. We'll talk about the environmental impacts, and they'll go, oh my God, that's terrible. And then we'll give them ideas on what to look for more sustainable products. And they go, oh, now I know what to look for. And then we signpost to 3 brands, and we usually get a discount on those brands. So straight away, someone's read an article, they've seen a solution that they can get some money off, and quite often they click and go, we'll buy that. They get it, they feel good about it, but they also want to tell their friends now because they've done something good. So their friends go, oh, that's brilliant. Or if they're at work and it's part of the workforce subscription, they might tell someone that hasn't read the weekly tip, And we've seen it grows organically within the business because people want to do good. They want to be the solution. They don't know what to do, but we offer that simple step-by-step approach.
Yeah.
And then for businesses, on top of the engagement piece, we provide templates and policies, very basic ones, a sustainability webpage template, sustainability policy that they can commit to, a net zero framework that allows them to map out their journey so that when they come back to us and go, I think we need a footprint report now and a reduction plan, we'll signpost them to someone. But they won't be doing it not knowing anything. They'll be doing it knowing this is what we need to do. This is the expert. And then they talk about it because they know about it. And it becomes part of their marketing. And then they win business and attract better employees. And the employees that work for them are happier and more productive. You see, because we work with about 200 businesses now. We've been going about 3.5 years.
That's brilliant.
Thank you. And we see the same thing. The senior leadership team, like a light switch, turns on. And they go, right, so this is actually what our customers now want.
Yeah.
By reducing our footprint, when the new legislation comes in for SMEs in X number of years, we'll already be doing it. And our competitors who aren't will be going, oh, what do we need to do? Mm-hmm. So they're all realising that now. And we're just really lucky that I saw a gap and I saw the patterns. And I'd had this bad experience with a tree planting not-for-profit. So I took all of that experience and the stuff that I'd learned and said, how's this going to work for business? And originally it was just for individuals and families, but a business signed up, saw the value, then came back to saying the staff love it, but I haven't got a clue what I need to do as a business.
Yeah.
So we provided that pathway, and we don't manage our customers. We don't check in on them. We expect them to be adults. Mm-hmm. And if they say that they're working on their footprint report and they've got one on their website and that they are doing it and that they're going to get it measured again in 12 months, but it really does work because as a business starts to win, the CFOs are always the hardest people to convince. But when they realise actually they can make more money and that it's more resilient money, they start to realise they need to do it. And then they get the dopamine from it as well. And then they realise that actually this profit that I've made is cleaner and it's better than the profit I used to make.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's all those concentric layers of benefits that make people feel good because their values are aligning with the work values and, well, you know, what's happening in the business. And I love everything you've described about that. All is rooted in story, telling a story that captivates people and helping them take the action so that they can become part of the story. And then they convey that story to other people and bring them on board. And that's a beautiful example of the community that you were talking about earlier as well. And creating those foundations for them to then move forward and then take the next step and take the next step. So I love what you've described there, and I think you're doing an incredibly valuable thing for businesses.
Thank you.
All right. So final question. Mm-hmm. This is where you share your hard-gained life wisdom. Based on your experience of life and work so far, what key learnings or simple words of advice can you share with listeners to help them on their journey?
I would say for people and individuals, momentum follows action, but you always have to start with the first step. And for businesses, I would say compliance is the minimum standard and don't get known as a company that fits with minimum standards.
Rise above them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like that action first that creates momentum. And it doesn't have to be a big action, as you said, it can start small.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, Richard. So finally, where can people find you online?
Playgreen.com is the website, or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active. So, please connect and follow my posts.
Fantastic. We'll share that in the show notes as well.
Amazing.
Richard, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed listening to your insights and I've enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been brilliant.
So I hope you took some notes because there are lots of great thoughts and ideas from Richard there to help us build better, future-proof businesses in 2026. As a fan of tiny habits as foundational steps to make consistent progressive change, I love how Richard explained Play It Green's clever business model for helping businesses, teams and individuals to make positive, incremental behavior change that sticks. As Richard advised, momentum follows action. So give some thought to the tiny steps that you can start taking now and in the new year to shift your business thinking around profit and impact so that you too can build a business and life that regenerates rather than depletes. So thanks so much for listening. The podcast will be back in January with season 15, which will have a new theme and a bit of a new format. I'm going to be exploring the subjects of burnout and overwork through the same lens that I've been writing about over on Substack. So that's it for this season, but a few quick notes before you go. If you found this episode helpful, please like or rate the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps others to find us. For deeper dives into building a more conscious business, subscribe to my Substack at creatingcadence.substack.com. You'll find out more about my work at creatingcadence.co, and you can grab a copy of my book at thecadenceeffect.com. I'm wishing you all the best for the rest of 2025, and here's to a better 26 for all of us. And until next time, keep moving forwards with courage, curiosity, and cadence. Bye for now.